Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us and a warm welcome from the KSA team. Today, we've asked a panel of people to join us to look at the basics of kitchen design and kitchen design software. And we're very grateful to Alicia from Maxima Software, from AJ from Articad, and from Quibus from Compusoft for joining us today and taking us through the wonder world of kitchen design and telling us a little bit about kitchen software. So Alicia, you're up first on the roster, so we are going to all disappear into the darkness and hand over to you.
Thank you, Stephanie. No problem. Okay, let's start. I think I've got reading a plan. Okay, so the first thing I'd like to speak about is scale. Scale and proportion are both design elements that have to do with size. Scale is the size of one object in relation to the other object in a design, normally in relation to the human scale. So if you look at the bit of the image there, it just shows you general ratios, and we're looking from 1 to 10, 5 to 7, and so forth. Going forward, there is a scale factor. So just to explain it more, if we look at when you're drawing or enlarging an image and you just use the square options or grids, you normally are able to just enlarge or double an image by doubling the size or multiplying that size by a different number, but the same sort of space. So for every 1 centimeter block, the item image is then duplicated in a larger 2 centimeter block. The item or the image will occupy the same amount of space in that particular image. And that's how we have normally the ratio 2 to 1. Next slide, Steph. In any CAD software, you're generally able to set the scale according to either screen resolution or if you'd like to print it or something of the sort. So you'll see I've just selected 2 options at this stage, a scale of 1 to 100 and 1 to 25 to show you the difference, that it just keeps the same image and drops it according to size on what you need, whether you need to print it on a particular A4, A5 page. Okay, so similarly, you're able then to look at a plan or a drawing from a bird's eye view, which is normally how we read plans. And this just shows 2 grids using the measurements of the units, which generally stay the same. And this floor space is then depicted in either 500 millimeter or 1000 millimeter space so that you can look at the area and adjust on how you'd like to put your components or units in. Next slide, Steph. Okay, so I just want to run through briefly on how we understand or read plans. Most CAD, which is computer-aided design software, assists you in having normally 3 or more renders. So it's either your plan view, which we're looking at currently, your elevation view, which adds all the same measurements from the plan and just includes the heights with all the measurements. Or you have your perspective view, which also has additional settings to have your photorealism and 3D views. Okay, next slide. So when we're looking at measurements, you'll see I've just taken the same plan and tried to explain it with color in layers. So I've got the 3 different colors there. One is the walls. All wall units I've selected in red so that you can have a look-see and see how it's planned out or easier to read. The floor units are highlighted in blue, and any appliances or additionals is highlighted currently in green. You'll also notice the measurements on the sides of all walls, and we're looking at the top measurements currently where there's 4 layers there, just to explain that the top measurement is normally your full wall. The second line shows the fixtures like windows or doors or anything additional. The third line is normally your wall units. So now I'm looking at your 500 space, your 600 space there. And then obviously your appliances. What sort of empty space do you have there? The appliance itself, which is normally a 600, but can be changed to whatever size appliance you actually need. And then the two smaller images I've just broken down where you can take out certain layers in the CAD software and, for instance, only see the wall units or only the floor units. And it just makes it a bit easier to read or print out if you need to depict it to the installer or somebody that doesn't know how to read a full plan. Next slide, please, Steph. Now, when we're looking at taking measurements and actually creating a plan, you need to really think about your space. So when you're taking your measurements, take into account all the walls, the windows, the entrances, the exits, anything, wherever you're doing your plumbing. So I'm just going to go through a couple of the ideas that we've noted. So when you're doing the measurements, take note of perhaps each individual wall, measure the height of the ceiling from the floor and make note of this. It's a good idea sometimes to do it in two places because walls in normal terms are not necessarily 90-degree angles straight. So it's just nice to know if you'd like to add any fillers or kick plates, etc., that you'll need to keep in mind that they won't necessarily be straight. They'll be out a couple of millimeters. Okay, so again, you see the bottom image. I've just shown you how many measurements you generally have to take, because if there's any window or niche, you need to note that. So every section on the wall from left to right, the space of the niche or the window or the entrance needs to be all separate measurements so that when you are changing the space or designing that you're getting the correct measurements. Next slide, please, Steph. Okay, so that's me. I'm going to now hand over to Cobus van der Kerr from Compusoft Winner, and he'll take you through kitchen layouts. Thanks.
Thank you, Alicia. Next I'm going to be talking about kitchen layouts, and this is quite interesting when we look at the different aspects to it. When we think about a kitchen layout or even a room to design, you always have to take into consideration the space that you're working in. This is going to be your canvas. This is where you're going to be doing your design and where you can eventually put in that masterpiece to your customer. So of course, you will be limited in every one of these designs according to what the customer's needs are. Is there, for example, an eating area? Does it have an integrated office? Do you have an entertainment area incorporated into the kitchen? Does this kitchen form part of another room? Is there perhaps a view you can incorporate, making use of large windows? And then obviously you don't want to have an area underneath the windows not applicable to the view. Traffic areas, you need to take in consideration. Of course, and also the customer itself, the people staying at home, that will determine how much traffic you will have in the areas. And we need to avoid this to make a good natural flow in the kitchen, like indicated on this design. Next, please. Right, another factor to take into consideration with space is then, of course, the measurement of your appliances, like the fridge, dishwasher, oven, hob. This is very important. These appliances will then also determine what kind of cupboards you can place in your design. As someone always said to me also, you measure twice and you only cut once. Therefore, like we've heard now about measurements as well, it's very important to get your accurate measurements. Functionality is another factor to look at. It might be that your customer have specific needs that you need to cater for. There might be specific equipments. Do you need more drawers or less? Is there a walk-in pantry, a separate pantry from the kitchen? Do you need to accommodate for vegetable storage? Maybe the customer is a chef or likes baking. You need to keep that also in consideration, creating that area where they can work in that time. Also, when you look at storage of certain elements in the kitchen, very important. Things like having glasses close to the fridge, spoons, etc., close to the stove and oven for cooking, cutlery trays and the table linen stored close to the eating area. It just makes it so much natural flow in the kitchen when you can reach out to these items close to the areas you're going to be using them at. Also, cooking utensils, make sure they're stored at a hip height, easy accessible while you're busy cooking on the stove. Also needed to take into consideration is the hinge on the refrigerator, left or right hinge. If it's an existing refrigerator. That can also have an effect on the flow in the kitchen eventually. Next, we're going to look at Magic Work Triangle. Now, this was developed a few years ago, the concept of including the hob, your sink and refrigerator in a triangle. And this triangle, we need to keep as natural flowed as possible and also as small as possible, but we are limited to the shape of the kitchen as to how this will be applied. And now we're going to look at the different shapes as well shortly. On the magical triangle, what is also very important to remember is to keep your tall units outside of this area. You'd like to have a continuous workspace to work on, and therefore tall units will hamper this flow in this work triangle area. Create, for example, also a food preparation area between the sink and the stove. Also next to the, locate the sink, for example, next to the cooking area. It makes it easier to reach out to the tap and you need to rinse something down or pour some water into the pots. Also the dishwasher, that is something that ends up in the cleanup area. Appliances should be selected for design, the user friendliness, and of course also to the preference of the customer. Either side of the sink, we'd like to leave at least 300 millimeters. It can be a bit bigger. There's always some space needed when you're utilizing the area in the sink. Also, cupboards above the sink. Try to avoid placing cupboards there. You can rather put the sink in a, for example, if it's allowed to, or for the space you have on the island or below a window. Also, then the tall units or your refrigerator, try to separate your workspaces by using these cupboards. The refrigerator position of it is preferred to have it on the outer perimeters of this work triangle. It just makes it easier for other occupants in the home to utilize the refrigerator without interrupting the cook or the baker in that case. Other things we should think about. We've been talking about the sink, which is normally be used for cleaning, but sometimes just a prep bowl is also very nice to put in the area and to utilize in your cooking triangle. Maybe there's a disposal unit or a water purification unit you need to add into the kitchen. This needs to be kept into mind as well, deciding what kind of cupboards you're going to be putting. And of course, the cooking area is the heart of the kitchen. You're going to be generating a lot of heat there. So ventilation is very important. You need to consider maybe adding an extractor, or also look at the flow, natural flow of air in the kitchen that can assist with the disposal of the heat there in that area. So when we come to planning of the kitchen, this is something that you will obviously do in the beginning. Planning is very, very important. It's essential because you can determine things like what's the budget the customer has in mind. Also, the space you have will determine what you can do. The space of the room you're going to work in is your canvas that you can work on, and you're limited in that space to really produce a good kitchen design. What layouts is going to work the best depending on the space you got. Also, very important, before you come to decorative aspects, putting in cupboards that looks nice, have a look and consider also your space for using cupboards that are more practical in the kitchen. Estimation of the costs is very important. What type of fixtures, appliances, electricity, plumbing, all of these factors will also contribute to the bottom line in the end. Are there maybe any special needs, wheelchair access, for example? And also something that's neglected is the height of the person, which needs to be taken into consideration when you think about placing the height of your base units. Next slide, please. Next, we're looking at some different kitchen layouts. And again, the kitchen in the end needs not to be only attractive. It needs to be also practical when we look at the kitchen. So the space, as mentioned before, will determine what layout is going to work best. And here we're going to look at the U shape. We can also include the G shape in this instance. This is maybe the easiest layout to apply the work triangle, where we can have the refrigerator, sink, and the cooking area on its own run of cabinets. But sometimes it might be that you can combine two of these elements on the same run. Next, we look at the island shape. Now, the island shape can also be combined with any of the other layouts, where you basically just have an island layout with some cupboards placed more or less in the center of the room. You can also create two triangles in this part, where you can have For example, the hob on the one side and the oven on the other side of the island. Sometimes it also can be that the island could fall outside the work triangle, again, depending on the space you have. The galley shape, and here we can also include the inline shape. So the inline shape will be only one line or one run of cupboards. This here, we will have an elongated work triangle. And you also have to consider movement. You're very limited in what you can do here. And you will try to keep the refrigerator, for example, at the end of the run and keep the sink and the hob as close together as you can. Next, the L shape. Again, here, depending on the run either side, it can be that you might have two elements on one run or only one. And then, of course, this may also lead to an elongated shape in the work triangle. We've heard about measurements just now from Alicia, and therefore the important thing to remember is dimensions. And dimensions at this moment will also be tied up with your customer's height. As indicated on these drawings here, you can see sometimes you might need to incorporate a step in order to reach high to reach places. Here's another factor to consider: average height person, anything between 1.6 and 1.7 meters on the right-hand side. Whereas on the left, if you have a relatively short person or customer, then of course you need to adapt accordingly. These are basically standard, you might say, industry sizes when it comes to plinth height and base unit and also your wall unit heights. And again, these are not cast in stone. It depends on various factors determining what you're going to use in the height placement for cupboards. Some other important things we need to remember to allow at least 1.2 meters of space between units. This is now in your galley and your inline type of layouts. We need to have enough room to move around, at least 90 centimeters to 120 centimeters between cupboards and an island unit, for example. Again, space you have will determine what you can do in the size of the island as well. Also, consider adding a filler at the start of a run. If you have a cupboard placed next to a wall, just to ensure that you'll have a proper functioning of the door. The minimum space between the stove and a sink, 60 centimeters, although it could be less, but this is preferred measurement to have between your stove and sink. And then also, of course, not placing any appliances in a corner adjacent to cupboards. It will hinder the opening of the cupboards. Also keep in mind drawer units. It will be awkward to have a drawer unit placed right in the corner and next to it a door unit, and hampering the opening of both of these units. Then leave some space also between the ceiling and the top full unit heights. This just allows for easier fitting of the cupboards as well. Also, when you look at your hob and your extractor, to leave and consider leaving a space of anything 55 centimeters to 80 centimeters. And this will also depend on the specs of the appliances you're going to be using. That might dictate that you have a certain height between the work surface and the extractor to allow for a proper flow of air. And that's from my side. Back to you, Alicia, for some trade regulations.
Thank you, Cobus. So let's talk trade regulations. This information is more technical. We have tried to summarize the information the best I can. I suggest you look up the information on the individual associations, websites, or contact them directly. So let's look at glass in your kitchen. Glazing, which is derived from the Middle English for glass, is part of a wall or window made of glass. When architects design buildings today, they have enormous amount of choice when it comes to glass and glazing. Different types of glass are rated for different purposes. Clear glass is made in various thicknesses. The larger the size of the sheet you are using, the thicker the glass needs to be. 3mm glass must be used to glaze any area larger than 0.75 square meters. In instances where there's bigger space, obviously you can use thicker glass up until maybe 6mm or thicker. 6mm glass must be used to glaze areas between 2.1 square meters and 3.2 square meters at the maximum sheet size is generally around 3.21 meters by 2.25 meters. Note that these are the dimensions that are given in the National Building Regulations and SABS National Standards that all designers and installers must use. Safety glass should be fitted in all doors other than windows or glazed areas that are lower than 800 millimeters from floor level. Next one. If we're looking at DB boards, we basically, first, what is a DB board? A DB board is a distribution board where the electrical supply is distributed from within the building. The main supply cables come into the board and then is distributed to the breakers and from there to all circuits, and this includes your lights, etc. Distribution board must not be mounted in a bathroom above a fixed cooking appliance or any position where a stationary cooking appliance should be below it, unless the enclosure provides for a degree of protection, or within a radius of 1 meter from a water tap or valve in the same room, unless the enclosure provides a degree of protection. They're usually located in the kitchen or in a garage, but they must be easily accessible, so unobstructed in case of a power failure or fault. When we're looking at electricity and water, to avoid water coming into contact with electricity, make sure that your sockets or switches are fitted at a safe distance, and that's at least 300 millimeters from the sink. Don't put stoves under windows or next to doors. Blowing off kitchen curtains or anything coming in, maybe leaves or branch, could catch fire on these burners. Stoves should also not be placed near doors because people tend to congregate in these areas, or they may brush against the hot stove, and for little kids passing through, you know, they might just hit the handle of a pan off the stove, and this is not good. If we're looking at appliances, keep ovens and refrigerators or freezers separated from another. Just basically, if you're using the motors of the fridge, will work extra hard if it's directly next to an oven or something that generates heat. Okay, most appliance doors are open wider than 90 degrees. As Cobus mentioned, it's a good idea to leave a larger space in an aisle or the distance between the units, because if a appliance door like an oven is open, it would be difficult for anybody to pass through there if it's anything smaller than 1.2 meters. Keep the stove away from the sink, at least 600 millimeters. This is to minimize the possibility of water splashing into the hot fat and actually exploding, or, you know, having a burn on a face or something of the sort. So don't put the refrigerator in an area where you use hot utensils as well. Try to keep the traffic flow close to a minimum. So have one person in that area at a time, as Cobus mentioned. Keep the refrigerator out of the working triangle. When using gas stoves, please keep in mind that the biggest thing is it needs to be installed by a certified gas installer. Your gas hob cooker should be installed a minimum of 200 millimeters away from any isolator or plug point. There may be no electrical switch in the cupboard directly below a gas hob. Your gas hob or cooker should not be installed a minimum of 5 meters from a DB board. Your gas hob should be a minimum of 1 meter away from any door. And generally inside a home, you need a maximum of 1 kg gas cylinder should be stored within the kitchen or internally, just as a safety measure. Anything bigger is normally caged outside. The installation must be done again by a registered gas plumber or installer, and a 1/2-inch copper pipe must be used if more than 1 meter. For further information, as I stated in the beginning, please check websites or the associations, in this case, lpgas.co.za. Handing over to AJ from Articad on design software. Thanks.
Thank you, Alicia. Okay, perfect. Now I'll discuss the design software and the package that can be used. The difference between architectural CAD and interior cabinetry CAD is more of a sales presentation tool than architectural CAD, created to specifically overcome the challenges faced by designers. Designers want easy-to-use software that will produce high-quality sales presentations very quickly, And the ability to make changes to a client's design and re-render is also important. The Cabri CAD can also feature specific supplier catalogs, such as branded furniture and appliances libraries, for a more realistic presentation, alongside accurate pricing of the design. Most Cabri CAD can output accurate pricing, sales orders, and even manufacturing information such as cutting list and board optimization, as well as other software features that can help the designer run his or her business. Perfect. Okay, the overall design software is the programs available cover more than just kitchens and cabinetry. As well as kitchen cabinetry, many programs also cater for bathrooms, bedrooms, studies, bars, and shop fitting, and with the ability to import graphics from sources such as Sketchup. The options for designers are endless. The skill comes in pulling the ideas and information from the client and translating them, with the measurements into the design program. Most good programs will create high-quality photorealistic renders, plans, and elevations. Perfect. As an example of a kitchen design, on the left-hand side, we have the plan that's already been drawn. On the top right, it's an elevation of the actual one wall, and then at the bottom is the 3D render, which has been done for the presentation. Okay, perfect. Let's see how the kitchen is designed with the software, and then how the software can be added to interface with your factory, creating a cutting board and even communication with your machinery. Perfect. So with the design of the kitchen, we already have all the measurements and everything now from the client's site. So now we need to start drawing up our room. Firstly, we'll start setting up our settings. For instance, your ceiling height, your kick plate height, your tall base units, your wall units, all specific to the measurements you've taken on site or at your client's premises. You can change a whole bunch of different settings depending on what type of design you would prefer. Now, before we can actually add units, we actually need to start adding walls. So we'll quickly add a wall of 700, and that's basically put your width in there. Then naturally the availability is doors, windows, all of that. So to add a door, you, for instance, again, width, height, all those settings you can change. Your hinging, opening inwards, outwards, different styles, and you can preview what you would like the look and feel to be, and you'll add that. And so we would carry on drawing our room. For instance, we can always follow the design flow on top. See, the last unit I've drawn is a 900 door, so now I'll add another wall into this design. Let's quickly go into that one. Perfect. And so now we'll carry on designing. We'll quickly run through this. That's, for instance, adding a window, adding a wall, adding additional wall. As you can see, you can sort of create the exact shape that you have measured on site. As Elisha said, in theory, no corner is always 90 degrees. So one can always put the exact degree in. If it's 100 degrees, that type of thing, you can alter the design to suit your specific needs. As you can see, one can easily add angled windows, doors. Anything can really be designed for your client. Naturally, save your design as always, as we know. So what we'll do is we'll start adding our base units now. And all the software available do have the drag and drop feature, which is very nice. It enables you to move your units around much more freely, and you can design much easier. For instance, we'll add now just a 2-pan pod drawer, and quickly just add it. We'll change it to 900 and add that into our design. There's a whole range of different base units and wall units that one can add to a design, and you can really decide what look and feel you would like to go for, and naturally what will work in the client's kitchen. For instance, from a one drawer unit through to a pull-out door unit. Now, a pull-out door unit can, for instance, be for a pull-out bin or those type of things, or even a spice drawer. You can also be very specific and determining your hinging, if you're hinging left, right, that type of thing. Okay, so we'll quickly run through, place the rest of our base units. All work exactly the same way, it's just different styles and feels to it. The software also provides appliances from ovens, hobs, any appliance that is available out there. Now we're going to add an under-counter oven with a hob, and we're going to have a look at the catalogs that's available. Now, for instance, we can see there's quite a bit of catalogs. There's naturally more that one can download. Now, for now, we can go for the AEG. We'll do an AEG hob and oven, and we'll add the hob in there. Same with the oven, is you can also, again, use a standard graphic, or alternatively, go use a supplier catalog. Now, these supplier catalogs can be asked for by suppliers and can be added to the software. So if your supplier is not in the software, you can actually then get their manufacturer models, colors, those type of things into the actual design. Perfect. So we're just placing our oven. Now, as you can see, there's continuous measurements that's updating, showing you if there's a gap between the units or so. So you can ensure that units are lining up exactly. So what we'll do now, again, same as the under-counter oven, we're going to put a tall oven housing with a AEG double oven in there. And then to the right of it, we're going to do a freestanding fridge, also AEG. Again, like I say, all from the same catalog, keeping the models exactly the same supplier. Perfect. Now, drawing wall units, again, same as the base units, for instance, because the wall units would determine your design. It helps quite a lot. Your base units is overall set your groundwork, and then you can start designing. So we'll place, for instance, a normal 850 unit, but same as base, you have a whole bunch of different options with the wall units, from glass or units, open units. So what we're doing at the moment is we're placing a 450 wide glass unit, and then what we're going to do is put an open unit above that to sort of create the design idea. So again, all the units have different settings one can customize up to your liking, hinging, etc. So quickly just duplicating it on the right hand side, just copying and pasting the open unit as well. And as you can see, now we quickly just run through doing the same and adding it onto our design. Perfect. Now we have actually done our design so far, so we would like to actually have a look at it. Now, all the software have different options of rendering qualities. You normally have your photorealism, your faster, then you have your HD, which is a high definition presentation, which you'll present to your client. But for now, you first just want to get your design ready. So there we can quickly see, and we already have our 3D drawn kitchen available there. Okay, perfect. So now what we can do is we can jump back, and we have noticed, for instance, that we need to add a extractor. Same as the ovens and the hobs. Again, there's appliance catalogs available. So therefore, you can have a look. For this one, I will use a different supplier, for instance, the Elica, instead of an AEG. Be grabbing that. Perfect. And as you can see, it's very easy to add to your design. You physically just click and drag it where you'd like to be on the design. Perfect. So now we'll just quickly go and change our door style. Again, same. There's different suppliers for your door styles. For instance, your supplier can give their own catalog, and we can add that there, for instance, or you can use just your standard doors. For instance, your plain laminate all-around trims, your shaker doors, your flat panels, all those type of doors, your wrap doors, and that will also affect your design. Now onto the colors, you can basically change anything's color to any color you would prefer. At the moment, I am changing the wall color, and we're just going for a plain green, but you can, for instance, contact a paint supplier and get the exact color chart and import into the software to apply it to the client's wall, for instance. So then they'll be able to show the exact color that the client will be actually painting their walls with. Perfect. Now, as you can see, the wall there has now changed. Okay, so perfect. So I'm just, okay, there they are. You can always, the nice thing with cabinetry design software is you can always, throughout the design, go change settings. You can change your door styles, you can change your room settings if you realize you have not set it up correctly in the beginning. So if you're never stuck, if you're halfway through the design saying, oh, now I need to start redrawing. Anything can really be reset, height-wise, size-wise, that type of thing. Perfect. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create a custom bulkhead above the the units to create sort of a bulkhead where we can put downlights, those type of things. Now, all software, you are able to do a custom drawing. This will be, for instance, a custom shelf, a custom scribe, a custom worktop. You can do even panels, shapes. That will be now in vertical or horizontal view, which gives you a nice tool to actually design something else that's out of the ordinary. Now, as you can see at the moment, it's the overall view of it is like a lot of the drawing programs. You have your grid view. You can basically draw your shape quickly and then start editing. You naturally have all the tools, like I say, with the grid, where it will allow you to actually change that. We can actually then just it basically makes life easier to get your drawing done and drawn up. Perfect. So just quickly going to finish off this one. As you can see, I'm just quickly drawing, pulling the nodes, the points into correct place, so it's all nice and straight. Okay. Now, like any other design tool, you can also zoom in, move around, that type of thing. So you'll never get stuck that you're not actually able to see what is going on. And we'll quickly just have a look at what our bulkhead will look like. Now, these custom shapes can actually be curved as well if you want a curved design. So you can always just curve that and do the necessary. Okay, I'm just now going to start changing some of the cabinet colors. As we said, the supplier catalogs can be added to the color charts. So you can get your exact color from your supplier. Once again, if the software does not have it, you can then you basically get the supplier's material, add it to your software, and do the exact presentation of what finish will be on the doors. Same as the worktop, any finishes that will be on the room. As you can see, you can keep on updating. Normally, it's playing around with colors, and that's just easy to find out what the client would like, the finish on the doors, but then to get the correct wall color, if you're doing the first presentation, floor color, that type of thing, that can take quite a bit of time. Depends on how much time you want to spend on it. Normally, it should not take too long and just get a design out. On adding SketchUp models, it can help quite a lot with accessories, those type of things. Now, as we know, the SketchUp has a SketchUp warehouse where you can download models from their actual warehouse and then import it into the software. So, which is nice. It can give you more access to accessories and those type of things. Also gives you the ability to actually adjust the sizes of the SketchUp models. So for instance, if the SketchUp model is modeled in a specific way and size, you can then go and change it. And if you realize, for instance, my light I've used here is completely too big, I can start just changing the height of ground, and then also I'll reset my model to a smaller look, because that has all to do with the presentation side of things. As you can see, I'm changing it from 1150 to 700. Perfect. I'm just changing height of ground there. Dragging it into place and just quickly having a look what it looks like. There you are. There you can see I've added the SketchUp model. That is perfect. Now, for instance, what we want to do is we would like to view an elevation of the actual wall run that we have. So as mentioned earlier, you can have elevations of your kitchen, and actually there are different options of what view you would get of the elevation. For instance, is it a color rendered elevation, or for instance, a line drawing, which I'll show the difference now. For instance, one can get the color one with all the necessary dimensions. And you can also then go change to a line drawing. Now, for drawing purposes, it's normally faster to keep it on a line drawing just to speed up your design process. Perfect. So, okay, you also have, if you want to send a presentation to a client, the software would be able to, for instance, create an RT-VR scene. That's, for instance, that's just one of the examples. That creates sort of a 3D virtual world that can be sent to a client, and they can actually physically walk around in their design and view as if they're in the game. They can almost play a game in their kitchen, viewing it. And basically then if you're sitting with your client, you can also do a virtual presentation with them while they're sitting with you. And you can just set up and you can, for instance, just start playing your your room, and your client can view it from all angles. And from here, you can pause and stop if the client would like to look into more depth. Perfect. Okay, there we go. We'll jump back to our plan now. Then additional features that one can get is, for instance, if you go to your reports, when you start ordering, let's say, for instance, you do not have production software, then you can get, for instance, a unit list or parts list from the actual design, which will tell you which base units you have, what wall units you have, appliances if you use, your worktop sizes, your length of your kick plate, your corners, pelmet, which can help with ordering and getting that out. Like I say, if you do not have the production software, you can order doors even from the list from here, from the parts list. Also, then, if your client, for instance, wants to know how much tiles does he need for his design, you can, for instance, there is built-in tools in all the software where you'll be able to give him an idea of square meter, naturally, if you've drawn your room correctly with the correct tiling areas, that type of thing. It will give you, for instance, floor square meters, your ceiling coving, which is, and your skirting board for this kitchen, which can help your client quite a lot. Perfect. I believe that is that. Next slide, please. Now we'll look into bringing the design into our production software. Sorry, Stephanie, the next one, please. Apologies. Yes, perfect. This is the one. So what we'll do now is we'll take our design from our design software to our production software. As we say, there's a lot of types and styles out there. Depends on what you need. For instance, catalog-based cutting software to actually exporting design from your CAD to your cutting side of things. So I've just added my client's details. I'm busy exporting it now. This will now automatically open up my production software where I can then carry on with my production. So I'm importing my design into the system. Now, then beforehand, before you actually run a job, you will, for instance, go load what you will produce from. For instance, like in your warehouse, we would call it a warehouse. That will allow you to add all your types of boards, all your edging, your solids, your fittings, anything that you want to use in your production side of things, and actually with the correct cost and price, which will then give you a nice pricing as well, and it's the correct pricing. So what I'll do now, I'm just selecting my preset carcass construction and then my preset drawer construction. This gets set up naturally for a client, and that can be reused in any job, because some clients have different production setups, so which is good. Now what we do is, for this job, we'll just set the type of material we would like to use. So for instance, the carcass, you'll choose what color carcass. Do you want a gray carcass, white carcass, what type of back sides, your cleat material, all those type of things that you'll actually be manufacturing the kitchen out of. Same with your draw materials, and naturally all your exposed sides if you're using for instance, a veneer or a color melamine. So I'm just busy setting that quickly up. As you can see, there's the ability to really choose what you'd like to is very nice. And also, naturally, the nice thing is, if you have already completed the job, you can come afterwards and change this and just rerun the job. If you want to start comparing cost, for instance, manufacturing cost or selling price cost, which is quite nice. It saves quite a lot of time. Perfect. So I've set up my materials. So now what I'll just do is I'll choose my door. So for instance, on my design I used was a flat panel door. So I'll just use my flat panel door. Now here, your shaker doors, all those type of doors can actually be loaded. Depends on what doors you're going to want to manufacture yourself. Drawer types, also what type of runner you're going to use. So for instance, I'll run with my standard runner. Attachments, yes, like your cornices, your light shields. Now that's basically, again, your design that you've done, and it's basically the look and feel you're going for. So what will your base supports be? So for instance, I'm using plastic legs on my base support, so then you'll know what to order and how many plastic supports you will need to order. Same with the plinth. And then your worktop, you can determine all this. Naturally, you can set up in a warehouse, for instance. So at the moment, I just have a Rustenburg dark loaded. That will give you your worktop calculations, and then you'll just use standard, or you start using your standard runners and your hinge configurations. Perfect. The nice thing is with these type of software, you can save your project ranges. So next time it is much easier and faster to run a job. So now I'm busy running the job through for manufacturing. So it's asking me, it picked up that there's appliances in this kitchen. It's asking me what would the aperture be for this appliance. So it knows how to calculate the rest of the cupboard, because sometimes the aperture in the design is not exactly the same as what the actual design has. Perfect. As you can see, I'm just running a cost per unit report. Now, this is your actual cost. That is how much it will cost you to produce. This naturally, that you won't charge this to your client, you will go on the selling price to your client, because you'll naturally put up your markups. For instance, a certain markup on your boards, a certain markup on your hinging, that type of thing. After you've ran the job, you can actually go edit. You can also have a look at the board optimization as mentioned earlier. Now you can decide what type of board you would like to have a look at. And this is the board that can basically be given to the factory, that they'll be able to do the necessary cutting. And here they also tell you which positions. Now these positions is basically links to the design package. So position 13 you would know is the unit drawn in the design package as number 13. Again, just another example of the board optimization. As I say, this is actually now sent to your guys in the factory itself. Perfect. Then as well, you have a bunch of different reports that we can generate for your installers, your cutting lists, guys, all that. For instance, just a couple of examples. An assembly list is what you'll need. What type of pieces do you need to manufacture this cupboard? So you'll know that, okay, I need a back, a bottom, a cleat, etc. to be able to create this unit. So you can also go into unit list. Again, that position links to the design software. There's, for instance, cutting lists, all different reports that will help you to just create a better manufacturing process, really. And for your installers as well, because they have your checklist, all that if you need to get to site and all those type of things. So, for instance, printing labels, you can easily put labels on your parts. If you are sending the units not already built, then it's much easier to compile and build on site. And that is basically, that from the cutting side of things. So I have run my job now. Stop now. Thank you. Yeah, just can we just skip this one, please? Thank you. Perfect. Now, the most commonly used programs in the kitchen industry today are supplied by the three companies here today. It's Articad, Compusoft, who supply Winner, and Maxima Software, who supply 2020 Fusion. So yes. Okay, each of our software hosts today would like to offer the opportunity of a separate session for the students, with each of them to learn more about the features that are unique to each of their programs. Lecturers can contact them directly to arrange this with the following email addresses, which you can then take note of. Thank you.
Thank you so much, AJ, and thank you to Alicia and to Quibus. That was fantastic, very informative. Kieran, do you have a few questions that might have popped to mind?
Yes, I've got one for Alicia with regards to the DB boards. Now, I know you said in your presentation that this shouldn't be covered by a cupboard, but what happens if you have advised the client this and they still insist on having it covered by a unit? Is there anything you can suggest for a designer to do in order to safeguard themselves from being held responsible should there be an accident?
Kieran, I'd have to say, while it's not considered illegal to have a distribution installed within a cupboard, they'd still need to comply with the SANS. I think it's 101, you know, the fundamental requirements, etc. But I suggest then the kitchen manufacturer or the installer get something in writing from the client to say that, listen, they have been advised, or actually draft the letter and just have the client sign it saying they've been advised that this shouldn't be done. It's It's not illegal, however, it is a problem when you can't reach the DB board. So should somebody start packing things within the shelves, that would be then a problem.
Thanks. And then a question for AJ. The additional stuff that you were showing us with regards to the cutting of the board and the factory side of the manufacturing of the units, does that come standard with the design programs, or is that an additional cost?
Normally from my side, for instance, it is an additional cost because not everyone would always want to produce. Some guys, it's only designers, so you only need the design software. So it's not compulsory to take both. So you will firstly get your design software to create your design, and then if you want the cutting side, that is an additional cost and additional package that gets loaded. Yes.
Okay, that's all I have, Steph.
Thanks, Karen. Kobus, maybe you can tell me when, for students coming into the industry, how important is it for them to have played with kitchen design software before they go into the job market, or should they have learned something or tried to make a plan to have gone on to some kind of training, or will they get trained by the kitchen company when they get an internship or a job?
This is actually a very good question to ask. I think, first of all, with the kind of software we've seen here today, each company will also have available training on the software itself. So there's not really a requirement of knowing how to work with CAD. They are very simple to use, straightforward. It is, though, of course, to your own benefit, should you have some basic PC skills, know your way around in Windows, then picking up on these software will be relatively easy with the type of training that can be presented.
Thanks so much. And just quickly for AJ, obviously each kitchen company has their own way of manufacturing a kitchen and installing a kitchen. I'm presuming that whichever software program they choose to work with, they can work with your companies to tailor make the software so it works with their standard protocols. So when a new designer comes in to work for their company, that it's not that they have to relearn everything. The program has already been set up to work with that company's standard protocols. Is that correct?
Yes, yeah, exactly. As you say, a lot of companies, each company almost produce different in the cutting side of things. So all of the software will basically be set up exactly for that client's needs. For instance, because skull carcasses gets manufactured differently, that type of thing. So yes, the software is set up for your specific client. So from our side, for instance, we'll set up the production construction method, let's say, and then that's already been loaded on the software and up and running. So when a new designer joins a company, all they need to basically learn with the help of the software provider is just how to use the software. But they don't have to go and reload any carcass constructions, that type of thing. But they will, if they want to do the manufacturing side of things, they will need to know a bit of manufacturing, naturally have that as a background to be able to send something to actual production. But that's already all set up then for them at the actual showroom, let's call it. Yes.
Super. Thank you. I think that's all the questions from us. So once again, a huge thank you for taking the time to help us out with this discussion. And to any of the lecturers whose students are doing the program, all three of our hosts today would be more than happy to engage further with you if you want to get further information for your students. You can refer to the email addresses here, or you can contact them via us. So once again, thank you very much, AJ, Alicia, and Kobus. Appreciate your time, and thank you very much for a great session.
Thank you very much.
Only a pleasure.
Thanks for having us.